Commander Park Tae-min stood in the massive chamber of the Galactic Council station called Concordia and looked up at the 12 towering seats where the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in judgment. The air felt heavy with ancient authority and the weight of thousands of years of galactic peace. His boots made small echoing sounds on the polished crystal floor as he walked to the center of the amphitheater where a single human-sized platform waited for him. Around the curved walls, holographic displays showed star maps of human territories marked in soft blue light, while the territories of the other 11 races glowed in different colors that painted rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. High, Chancellor Morden rose from his crystalline throne, and his body caught the light from a dozen sources as he began to speak in a voice that rang like distant bells. Representative Park Tae-min of the Human Collective, you stand before this ancient body to receive our final decision regarding your species' place in galactic civilization. The Chancellor paused and looked down at Park with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of stellar empires. For 50 standard years we have observed your people with growing concern, and we can no longer ignore what we see. Park kept his face calm even though his heart was beating faster, as he watched the 11 alien representatives lean forward in their seats like predators preparing to strike. To his right sat Councillor Vexhai of the Saurian Republic, whose scales shifted from green to deep red as his emotions changed and whose sharp teeth gleamed in the artificial light. The massive bulk of Commander Thoktar from the Ursine Coalition filled the largest seat while his fur bristled with barely contained aggression. The ethereal form of Speaker Zilara from the Psionic Dominion floated above her seat as waves of mental energy rippled around her translucent body. Your species displays dangerous tendencies that threaten the peace we have maintained for over 3 millennia, continued the Chancellor, while data streams flowed across the holographic displays, showing human military actions and territorial expansions. You expand too quickly, you arm yourselves too heavily, and you show aggression toward neighbors who have done nothing to provoke such hostility. The air in the chamber seemed to grow colder as the Chancellor spoke, and Park could feel the weight of 11 civilizations pressing down on him like a physical force. Dr. Kim So-ra stood quietly in the observer section behind Park, and her scientific mind was already analyzing the alien body language and vocal patterns she had studied for years, in preparation for this moment. She noticed how the plant-like Verdani representative swayed slightly as if in a gentle breeze that existed only in his imagination, while the machine-like Nexus Collective delegate remained perfectly still, except for the soft blue glow that pulsed behind his optical sensors. Every detail mattered now because she knew that what happened in the next few minutes would determine the fate of 15 billion human souls scattered across dozens of worlds. Ambassador Lee Woo-jin sat beside Dr. Kim, and his aged hands gripped the armrest of his chair as he watched the proceedings unfold according to patterns he had feared for months during his private diplomatic meetings. He had spent years building relationships with moderate voices in the council, but now he could see that the hardliners had won the debate behind closed doors, and the decision had already been made before Park even entered the chamber. Therefore, announced Chancellor Morden as his crystalline body grew brighter and cast dancing shadows across the walls, this council has voted to offer humanity a choice that will ensure galactic stability while protecting your people from the consequences of your own nature. The holographic displays shifted to show new territorial maps where human space had shrunk to a fraction of its current size, while new boundary markers appeared in threatening red lines. You will withdraw from all Outer Rim territories and accept protectorate status under the joint supervision of the Saurian Republic and the Etherian hegemony, who will guide your development toward more peaceful pursuits. Park felt his blood turn cold as he realized they were essentially demanding that humanity become a vassal state, with no real independence or control over their own destiny. The Outer Rim territories contained the mining worlds and agricultural colonies that fed Earth and the other core human worlds, and losing them would mean economic collapse and possible starvation for billions of people. And if we refuse this generous offer? He asked in a voice that remained steady despite the anger building in his chest like a growing fire. Councillor Vexhai leaned forward, and his reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile, if it had contained any warmth instead of cold calculation. Then we will be forced to take corrective action to protect galactic peace and stability. he hissed as his forked tongue flicked out to taste the fear he expected to find in the air. Your fleets will be dismantled, your military leaders will be removed, and your colonies will be placed under direct council administration until such time as your species demonstrates the maturity necessary for self-governance. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the station's life support systems and the distant sound of stellar wind against the outer hull, as the council waited for Park to respond with the expected pleas for mercy or desperate attempts at negotiation. They had used this same approach successfully with the younger Cathari species 2 centuries ago, and expected similar results from the primitive humans who had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Park looked around the chamber and met the gaze of each council member as he considered his response. He thought about the hidden shipyards in the asteroid belts where human engineers had been working in secret for decades, and about the intelligence reports that Dr. Kim had compiled regarding alien military capabilities and weaknesses. He thought about Admiral Han Ji-woo and the Ghost Fleet that existed only in classified files, and about the thousands of human soldiers who had trained their entire lives for the war that everyone hoped would never come. You know, Park said finally as a strange smile began to form on his lips, there's something you should understand about humans before you make this decision final. He paused and looked directly at Chancellor Morden, whose crystalline features reflected confusion at this unexpected response. We've spent the last 50 years studying your histories and learning about your cultures, and there's one thing that keeps appearing in every record we've examined. The council members exchanged glances that mixed curiosity with growing irritation as they waited for this human to reach his point and accept their generous terms with appropriate gratitude. You've all forgotten what real war looks like, Park continued as his voice grew stronger and filled the chamber with unexpected confidence. 3,000 years of peace have made you soft and comfortable, and you think that conflict means sending formal protest letters and economic sanctions. His smile grew wider as he saw the first flickers of uncertainty in several alien faces. You've forgotten that some species never stop preparing for the next fight, because they know that peace is just the time between wars when smart people get ready. Chancellor Morden's crystalline body dimmed slightly as confusion and the first hint of concern began to color his thoughts. You speak as if you have some choice in this matter, but your entire military consists of perhaps 200 vessels, while this council commands over 10,000 ships crewed by species with technologies your people cannot even comprehend. Park nodded slowly as if considering this point carefully before responding. You're absolutely right about our numbers, and you're probably right about your technology too, but you're making one critical mistake. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees as every alien representative leaned forward to hear what this primitive human thought he knew that they did not. You think we've been sitting quietly in our little corner of space for 50 years just being grateful that you let us join your club. Dr. Kim Sora felt her pulse quicken as she realized that Park was about to reveal secrets that had been hidden for decades, while Ambassador Lee closed his eyes and silently prayed that humanity was truly ready for what was about to begin. Saimikom. Truth is, Park said as his voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive chamber, we've been getting ready for this conversation since the day we first met you. He turned slowly to face each council member in turn as he delivered his final words. You've grown soft in your 1,000 years of peace, but we haven't forgotten what war truly means. And now you're about to remember why that matters. Chancellor, Morden's crystalline form flickered with patterns of light that indicated extreme agitation as the implications of Park's words began to sink in. Are you threatening this council? He demanded in a voice that rang with outraged authority. No, Park replied calmly as he straightened his uniform and prepared to leave the chamber. I'm just telling you that you have 72 hours to reconsider your ultimatum, because after that, we stop pretending to be the harmless little species you think we are. He turned toward the exit as the council erupted in shocked voices and angry demands for clarification. When you're ready to treat us as equals instead of pets, you know where to find us. As Park walked away from the platform with Dr. Kim and Ambassador Lee following close by, Admiral Han Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the battleship Soul's Pride and watched through the reinforced viewport as thousands of ships emerged from the asteroid mining facilities that had hidden them for 20 years. The massive vessels moved, with the silent grace of predators awakening from long sleep as their crews activated weapon systems that existed in no official records and had never appeared on any inspection report submitted to the Galactic Council. Navigation lights flickered to life across hulls designed to absorb sensor scans and redirect them into empty space, while fusion reactors that had been disguised as simple ore processors began powering up weapon systems that could crack planets. "Admiral," called Captain Yoon Da-hai from her position at the tactical console where she monitored the deployment of the stealth destroyer Ghost of Seoul, "all Ghost ships are reporting ready status and awaiting final deployment orders." Her fingers moved across holographic controls that managed sensor arrays capable of tracking enemy vessels across multiple star systems, while remaining completely invisible to even the most advanced alien detection equipment. "The Phantom Wing has successfully infiltrated Council patrol routes and is standing by to begin harassment operations on your command." The Bridge of Soul's Pride hummed with quiet efficiency as human officers who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment began implementing battle plans that had been refined through countless simulations and wargames. Colonel Cho Min-ho appeared on the main communication screen from his command ship Iron Tiger, where elite human soldiers practiced boarding operations against mock-ups of alien vessels built from stolen technical specifications. Behind him, rows of armored troops checked weapons designed specifically to exploit the biological and technological weaknesses that human intelligence had identified in each Council species over decades of careful study. "Ghost Fleet Alpha reports full readiness," announced Engineer Kang Hyejin from her position at the engineering station, where she monitored power distribution across weapon systems that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology stolen by intelligence operatives who had posed as harmless diplomats and trade representatives. "All ships are showing green across the board for stealth systems, quantum torpedoes, and adaptive shielding." Her screens displayed technical readouts for weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, because humans had developed them in complete secrecy, while publicly maintaining their image as peaceful newcomers to galactic civilization. Dr. Kim Sora's encrypted message had arrived 47 hours ago, and triggered the activation of Protocol Prometheus, which brought online military assets that represented 30 years of secret preparation and planning. Hidden shipyards throughout the Sol system and in asteroid belts of remote systems began launching vessels that had been built using materials officially listed as mining equipment and industrial components. Research stations disguised as university campuses activated laboratories where human scientists had spent decades developing new technologies based on captured alien artifacts and intelligence gathered through infiltration operations that the Council never suspected. Admiral Han Ji-woo turned from the viewport and walked to the central command platform where holographic displays showed the positions of every human military asset across known space, along with real-time intelligence updates on Council fleet movements and defensive preparations. Dr. Kim's report indicates that the Council still believes we possess only the 200 ships they know about, he said, as he studied tactical assessments prepared by intelligence analysts who had spent years mapping alien military capabilities and identifying critical vulnerabilities. "They have no idea that we've been building the real fleet in places they never bothered to look." The Soul's Pride had been built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the Kuiper Belt, using materials that arrived disguised as supplies for legitimate mining operations, while its crew trained in simulators that perfectly replicated alien ship designs and tactical doctrines. Human engineers had studied every aspect of Council military technology through intelligence operations that relied on the alien assumption that humans were too primitive and straightforward to engage in sophisticated espionage activities. Council species shared technical information freely among themselves while maintaining strict security, only against threats they considered significant enough to worry about. Lieutenant Shin A-ri monitored communication channels from her station aboard the intelligence-gathering ship Silent Arrow and intercepted alien military communications that revealed the Council's complete confidence in their overwhelming superiority over human forces. "Admiral, Council fleets are moving into position for what they're calling a simple police action to bring the humans into compliance," she reported, as her screens displayed translated alien communications discussing human territorial occupation, as if it would require no more effort than arresting unruly children. Intelligence estimates indicate they're deploying approximately 1,200 ships across 3 task forces, which they consider more than sufficient to handle our entire military. Captain Yoon Da-hee smiled grimly as she reviewed the deployment. Orders for her stealth ships which would demonstrate that human understanding of warfare had evolved far beyond anything the peaceful council species could imagine. The Ghost of Seoul and its sister ships carried weapon systems based on human historical knowledge of asymmetric warfare, adapted for space combat through technologies that combined alien science with human tactical thinking. While council species fought according to rigid honor codes and formal engagement protocols developed over centuries of limited conflicts, humans had studied every form of warfare that had ever existed and adapted those lessons for battles among the stars. Colonel Cho Min-ho's Iron Tigers represented another aspect of human military preparation that the Council had never considered, because their own ground forces consisted mainly of ceremonial guards and peacekeeping units that had not engaged in serious combat for hundreds of years. Human soldiers trained constantly in combat techniques that were considered primitive and brutal by galactic standards, but which proved devastatingly effective against opponents who expected conflicts to follow civilized rules of engagement. The Colonel's forces had spent decades studying the biology and psychology of each council species to develop tactics that would exploit their specific weaknesses and cultural blind spots. All Ghost fleets report ready status, announced engineer Kang Hyejin, as she monitored the final system checks on weapons that represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, combined with technologies reverse-engineered from alien artifacts acquired through intelligence operations that spanned decades. Stealth systems are operating at full efficiency, and quantum torpedo bays are loaded with variable-yield warheads designed for each target species. Her engineering teams had solved problems that alien scientists considered impossible by approaching technology from perspectives shaped by human desperation and creativity, rather than the comfortable assumptions of species that had enjoyed peace for millennia. The bridge displays updated as reconnaissance drones reported Council fleet positions and movement patterns that revealed their complete lack of concern about human military capabilities. Alien commanders discussed their mission using communication protocols that humans had cracked years ago while planning occupation strategies that assumed human forces would surrender after minimal resistance. Council military doctrine had evolved during centuries of peace into elaborate formal procedures, designed more for ceremony than actual combat effectiveness. Admiral Han Ji-woo opened a secure channel to Dr. Bae-jun Seok at the Weapons Research Division, where scientists had spent decades developing artillery systems that combined human ballistic principles with alien energy technologies to create hybrid weapons that no Council species had ever encountered. Dr. Bae, what's the status on Project Thunderstorm? The Admiral watched as technical specifications appeared on his screen, showing plasma cannons that could punch through alien shields designed to stop energy weapons by using kinetic principles that most species had abandoned centuries ago. All Thunderstorm arrays are online and ready for deployment, replied Dr. Bae from his underground laboratory, where teams of engineers had worked in complete secrecy to develop weapon systems that violated every assumption Council species made about human technological capabilities. We've completed final calibrations for Saurian shield harmonics and Etherian energy absorption patterns. His weapons represented a fusion of human engineering with alien science that created capabilities neither species could have developed alone. General Lim Young-soo appeared on the communication screen from his command center, where he coordinated ground forces that had trained for decades in combat scenarios that other galactic species considered unthinkably violent and chaotic. Admiral, all planetary defense forces report ready status and special operations units are in position to begin infiltration missions against Council occupation forces, he reported, while behind him tactical displays showed defensive preparations that turned human colonies into deadly traps for overconfident alien invaders. The Council clearly expects us to surrender our worlds without significant resistance based on their IPR. The Saurian Fourth Fleet approached New Busan with the casual confidence of predators expecting easy prey as their massive dreadnoughts moved through space in formation patterns that had remained unchanged for 3 centuries of peaceful operations. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship Scaled Justice and watched the blue-green world grow larger in the viewport, while his officers prepared boarding parties and occupation protocols that had been used successfully in previous council interventions against rebellious younger species. The reptilian commander's scales shifted to a pleased golden color as he anticipated the swift surrender that would demonstrate Saurian superiority over the upstart humans who had dared to defy council authority. "Admiral," called his tactical officer as warning lights began flashing across the bridge displays. "We're detecting massive system failures throughout the fleet." Engineering reports flooded the communication channels as Saurian vessels discovered that critical systems were shutting down without explanation, while backup systems failed to activate properly. Navigation computers displayed error messages in languages that no Saurian technician recognized, while life support systems began operating at reduced efficiency that threatened crew safety during extended operations. Captain Yoon De-hee watched from the bridge of Ghost of Seoul as her stealth destroyers emerged from sensor shadows like deadly phantoms, materializing from empty space. The human vessels had been tracking the Saurian fleet for days while remaining completely invisible to alien detection systems that had been designed to identify known threats rather than technologies that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. "All units report target acquisition," she announced as her weapons officers locked quantum torpedoes onto alien vessels whose shields had been weakened by the sabotage operations that human infiltrators had conducted during routine maintenance visits to Saurian shipyards over the past several months. The first human attack caught the Saurian fleet completely unprepared, as invisible ships launched weapons that bypassed their defensive systems and struck with devastating precision against targets that had never faced serious opposition in living memory. Quantum torpedoes designed specifically to exploit Saurian shield harmonics punched through defensive barriers that had been considered impenetrable, while plasma cannons that combined human ballistic principles with alien energy technologies delivered damage patterns that Saurian engineers had never encountered and could not effectively counter. Admiral Kethvar watched in shock as his mighty dreadnoughts began exploding under weapon impacts from attackers that his sensors could not detect, while his communication officers received frantic damage reports from vessels throughout his formation. "How are they targeting us when our sensors show empty space?" he demanded, while his tactical displays showed impossible weapon signatures that violated everything the Saurian military understood about human technological capabilities. The bridge shook as the scaled justice took direct hits from weapons that should not have been able to penetrate their advanced defensive systems. At Terra Nova, Colonel Cho Min-ho's Iron Tigers demonstrated why human ground forces represented a completely different category of military threat than anything Council species had previously encountered. The Verdani occupation force had expected to land on a peaceful agricultural world and accept the grateful surrender of colonists who would welcome Council protection from their own aggressive government. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who had spent years preparing defensive positions and studying Verdani biology to develop tactics that turned their peaceful nature into a critical vulnerability. Lieutenant Commander Park Si-jin led the first ground engagement as human soldiers emerged from underground bunkers and began implementing guerrilla warfare techniques that the plant-like Verdani could not comprehend or effectively counter. The alien invaders had evolved on worlds where conflict meant formal disagreements resolved through peaceful negotiation, while their military forces consisted mainly of ceremonial guards who had never experienced actual combat against opponents determined to kill them. Human soldiers used camouflage and stealth tactics that made them nearly invisible in the forest environments, where Verdani forces expected to establish secure positions. The Verdani commander Bloomtel tried to coordinate his forces using communication methods that relied on pheromone signals and bioelectric pulses that human intelligence had studied extensively during decades of preparation. Colonel Cho's forces used chemical compounds that disrupted Verdani communication while deploying weapons that exploited their photosynthetic biology to create effects that were both physically and psychologically devastating to plant-based organisms that had never evolved defensive mechanisms against determined predators. "Sir," reported Sergeant Kim Yoo-jin from his concealed position overlooking the main Verdani landing site, "enemy forces are showing signs of systematic breakdown as our disruption tactics take effect." His unit had spent months practicing combat, techniques designed specifically for use against each Council species, while studying their biological weaknesses and psychological vulnerabilities. They're trying to establish defensive positions, but their communication systems are failing, and they appear confused by our tactical approaches. At Harmony Station, Lieutenant Shin Ari's cyber warfare unit demonstrated that human understanding of information systems had advanced far beyond what the machine-like Nexus Collective considered possible for organic species. The Collective's automated invasion protocols relied on predictable logic patterns that human programmers had studied and learned to manipulate through years of careful analysis of captured alien computer systems. When Nexus forces attempted to take control of station systems through their standard hacking techniques, they discovered that human programmers had prepared counter-intrusion programs that turned their own technology against them. The Nexus Collective ships approaching Harmony Station began experiencing cascading system failures as their own automated systems received commands that appeared legitimate but actually implemented human-designed programs that took control of critical functions. Navigation systems began plotting courses toward stellar hazards, while weapons systems targeted other Nexus vessels instead of human defenders, and life support systems started implementing energy conservation protocols that gradually reduced crew survivability to dangerously low levels. Commander Logic Prime struggled to understand how organic beings had developed cyber warfare capabilities that exceeded collective programming, while his ship's computer systems showed him tactical data that appeared accurate, but actually came from human-controlled sources that fed him false information about enemy positions and capabilities. The machine consciousness had spent centuries developing logic systems that assumed organic species would be limited by biological thinking patterns and could never match artificial intelligence in computational warfare. Dr. Baijun Seok monitored the battle progress from his underground weapons laboratory, where teams of human engineers tracked the performance of hybrid weapon systems that combined alien technology with human tactical innovation. His plasma cannons were performing exactly as designed, while quantum torpedoes delivered precise damage to alien vessels, whose defensive systems had been mapped through years of intelligence gathering. All thunderstorm arrays are exceeding performance specifications, he reported as his weapons demonstrated that human engineering could improve on alien technology through approaches that no council species had considered. Admiral Han Jiwoo received battle reports from his fleet commanders as human forces engaged council fleets across 3 star systems simultaneously while maintaining complete tactical surprise through superior intelligence and strategic positioning. The Soul's Pride coordinated attack patterns that exploited alien formation doctrines, while human stealth technology allowed his ships to strike from positions that council sensors could not detect, until after the attacks had already achieved their objectives. "Admiral," called Captain Yoon Da-hai as the Ghost of Seoul completed its attack run against the Saurian 4th Fleet. "Enemy forces are beginning retreat procedures after losing 60% of their vessels to our initial strike." Her tactical displays showed Saurian ships attempting to withdraw from the battle zone, while their surviving crews tried to understand how invisible human vessels had appeared from empty space and destroyed their fleet using weapons that should not have existed. "Shall we pursue and complete the destruction of their remaining forces?" General Lim Young-soo coordinated defensive operations across multiple human colonies, as his ground forces demonstrated that Council occupation forces had no experience. With opponents who refused to follow civilized rules of engagement, human soldiers used tactics that other galactic species considered primitive and barbaric, but which proved devastatingly effective against enemies who expected conflicts to proceed according to formal protocols developed during centuries of limited peacekeeping operations. Engineer Kang Hye-jin monitored power distribution across human weapon systems as her fusion reactors maintained maximum output while supporting weapons that drew energy levels far. President Seo Min-jung stood before the emergency session of the Human Defense Council in the underground bunker beneath New Geneva, while holographic displays showed the positions of council fleets massing for a full-scale invasion that would bring over 10,000 alien warships against human territories. Her advisors had presented casualty estimates that ranged from catastrophic to extinction level as the combined military might of 11 ancient civilizations prepared to demonstrate why no species had successfully challenged council authority in over 2 millennia. The president's decision would determine whether humanity survived as an independent civilization or disappeared entirely from galactic history. Gentlemen and ladies, she began as her voice carried the weight of 15 billion human lives across multiple star systems. The Council has made their position clear, and we must now make ours equally unmistakable. The display screens updated to show intelligence reports indicating that alien forces were mobilizing reserve fleets that had not seen active service in centuries, while calling up military units from species that considered warfare an obsolete concept suitable only for primitive civilizations. I am authorizing the activation of all Black Project assets and the implementation of total war protocols that will demonstrate exactly what humans are capable of when our survival is at stake. Admiral Giankite received his activation codes aboard the massive dreadnought Soul's Vengeance, which had been built in complete secrecy within the hollowed interior of an asteroid mining facility that officially processed rare metals for commercial use. His second fleet consisted of vessels that combined human engineering with reverse-engineered alien technology, while crewed by soldiers who had trained their entire careers for warfare against technologically superior opponents. The ships around him represented 30 years of secret preparation and the most advanced military hardware that human science could produce when driven by the knowledge that failure meant extinction. All Second Fleet units report ready status, announced Captain Oh Hyun-woo from his position aboard the strike cruiser Iron Fist, where his crew prepared for combat operations against enemy supply lines that stretched across multiple star systems. His ship carried weapons designed to exploit the logistical vulnerabilities that human intelligence had identified in Council military organization, while his tactical officers planned attacks that would demonstrate that humans understood warfare as the complete destruction of enemy capabilities rather than the limited conflicts that other species preferred. Dr. Park Subin activated the final protocols for Project Pandora from her laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface, where teams of scientists had spent decades developing weapons that combined human historical knowledge of total warfare with alien technology and human innovation. Her creations represented the darkest aspects of human military thinking, scaled up for interstellar conflict, while maintaining the moral restraints that separated civilized warfare from simple genocide. The weapons she had created could crack planets or sterilize entire star systems, but would be used with the precision that separated professional soldiers from monsters. Pandora systems are online and ready for deployment, she reported as her screens showed technical specifications for weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, because other species had never developed the combination of scientific knowledge and tactical ruthlessness necessary to create such devices. Her research teams had solved problems that alien scientists considered impossible by approaching warfare from perspectives shaped by thousands of years of human conflict experience, rather than the peaceful assumptions of species that had forgotten the true meaning of existential threat. The Council's massive invasion fleet began its approach to human space with the overwhelming confidence of civilizations that had never experienced serious military defeat, while their commanders planned occupation strategies based on historical precedents where younger species had surrendered after token resistance. Admiral Thexmore of the Draconic Empire led the central battle group with ships that had served as ceremonial flagships for centuries, while carrying weapons that had never been fired in actual combat against opponents who intended to fight back with everything they possessed. Intelligence reports indicate that human forces are retreating from forward positions, reported his tactical officer, as scouts detected the apparent withdrawal of human vessels from outer system defensive positions. The Draconic Fleet interpreted this movement according to their own honorable combat traditions, which assumed that strategic withdrawal indicated preparation for formal surrender rather than tactical repositioning for asymmetric warfare operations that would exploit their formation doctrines and communication protocols. Captain Oh Hyun-woo led his strike forces against Council supply convoys using tactics that demonstrated human understanding of logistics warfare, while alien commanders struggled to comprehend attacks that targeted support vessels rather than engaging in honorable fleet battles. His raiders struck at fuel tankers and ammunition transports while avoiding direct confrontation with heavily armed warships whose commanders expected human forces to meet them in formal battle arrangements. The strikes created shortages that forced Council fleets to operate at reduced efficiency, while their commanders tried to understand why humans refused to fight according to civilized rules of engagement. Lieutenant Kim Hae-won coordinated cyber warfare operations from her position aboard the electronic intelligence ship Digital Phantom, where human programmers had developed intrusion techniques that exploited the communication protocols and data security systems used by different council species. Her teams inserted viruses and logic bombs into alien computer networks while monitoring enemy communications to provide tactical intelligence that gave human commanders decisive advantages in planning their operations. The alien fleets discovered that their secure communication channels had been compromised for months, while their tactical data contained false information inserted by human intelligence operatives. Colonel Cho Min-ho's ground forces prepared defensive positions on human colonies, using fortification techniques that combined historical human military engineering with advanced technology, while alien landing forces approached planets expecting to face opponents who would surrender after brief resistance. The colonel's soldiers had studied the psychology and biology of each council species, while developing tactics that exploited their cultural blind spots and physical vulnerabilities through combat methods that other galactic civilizations considered unacceptably brutal and primitive. The battle for the Kepler system began when Admiral Jian Qitai's Second Fleet emerged from hyperspace using coordinates that placed human vessels inside the Council formation where alien point defense systems could not effectively target them, while their own weapons achieved optimal firing positions against enemy ships. The Soul's Vengeance launched quantum torpedoes that had been designed specifically to penetrate Etherian shielding, while human plasma cannons exploited weaknesses in Saurian armor that had been mapped through decades of intelligence analysis. All units engage according to Plan Thunderstorm, ordered Admiral Jian as his fleet demonstrated that human tactical doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower concentration against critical targets rather than the distributed engagement patterns that Council fleets used in their formal combat exercises. His ships moved in attack formations that maximized mutual support, while exploiting alien psychology to create confusion and hesitation among enemy commanders who had never faced opponents willing to accept massive casualties to achieve tactical objectives. Engineer Kang Hye-jin monitored power distribution across human weapon systems as her fusion reactors maintained maximum output, while supporting weapons that drew energy levels that would overload alien power systems within minutes of sustained fire. Her engineering teams had developed heat dissipation and energy management techniques that allowed human vessels to maintain higher combat performance for longer periods than Council ships whose systems had been designed for limited engagement durations against opponents who fought according to civilized restraints. The Nexus Collective discovered that their logical battle algorithms could not predict human tactical decisions that appeared irrational, according to mathematical models that assumed all species would prioritize unit preservation over mission accomplishment. Human commanders made choices that sacrificed individual ships to achieve strategic advantages, while their crews followed orders that other species would consider suicidal, but which proved devastatingly effective against opponents who expected all conflicts to follow predictable patterns. Dr. Park Subin received authorization to deploy her Pandora weapons as Council fleets began their final approach to the Sol system, where they intended to capture Earth and force human surrender through the threat of planetary bombardment. Her weapons represented the ultimate expression of human military capability, combined with the moral restraint that separated civilization from barbarism, while demonstrating that humanity possessed the means to destroy any enemy that threatened their survival. Pandora deployment is authorized for tactical use only, confirmed President Seo Min-jung from her command bunker as she watched tactical displays that showed alien Admiral Yu Yun-seo stood on the bridge of her flagship Terra's Wrath and watched the massive bulk of Concordia Station growing larger in the viewport, while her siege fleet maintained a perfect blockade around the ancient seat of galactic power. 6 months of warfare had reduced the mighty Council fleets to scattered remnants hiding behind the station's defensive shields, while their once proud civilizations begged for mercy from the primitive humans they had tried to subjugate. The crystalline spires and elegant architecture of the station reflected the light from nearby stars, as if mourning the end of 3 millennia of unchallenged authority. "Admiral," reported Captain Nam Tae-young from his position coordinating the fighter squadrons that patrolled the perimeter to prevent any Council vessels from escaping, "all approaches to the station remain secure, and enemy forces show no signs of attempting a breakout." His pilots flew in formation patterns that demonstrated absolute control of the space around Concordia, while their weapons remained ready to eliminate any alien vessel that might try to flee before surrender negotiations could be completed. The fighter wings represented just a fraction of human military power that now dominated every major star system, where Council authority had once been absolute. Inside Concordia Station, the surviving members of the Galactic Council huddled in their emergency session chamber while reviewing casualty reports that documented the complete collapse of their combined military forces. Chancellor Morden's crystalline form had lost much of its earlier brilliance as stress patterns flickered across his body, while he tried to comprehend how his ancient civilization had been brought to the edge of extinction by a species that had seemed so harmless just months before. The holographic displays around the chamber showed star maps where human forces now controlled territory that had belonged to Council species for thousands of years. "How many ships do we have left?" asked Counselor Vex High, in a voice that no longer carried the arrogant confidence he had displayed when threatening humanity with corrective action. His reptilian scales had shifted to the dull colors that indicated defeat and despair, while his tactical advisors presented reports that documented the systematic destruction of Saurian fleet elements by human forces that seemed to anticipate their every move and counter their every strategy. The Fourth Fleet that had approached New Busan with such confidence had been completely destroyed, while other Saurian formations had suffered similar fates across multiple engagements. Commander Thoktar of the Ursine Coalition struggled to understand how his species' reputation for physical prowess had meant nothing when facing human soldiers who fought with a combination of technological superiority and tactical ruthlessness that no alien force could match. His ground forces had been defeated on every world where they had attempted landing operations, while human defenders demonstrated that their peaceful colonies concealed military preparations that had been developing for decades in complete secrecy. General Park Soo-young led her occupation forces through the corridors of Concordia Station as human marines secured critical systems and established control over the facilities that had served as the center of galactic government for longer than human civilization had existed. Her soldiers moved with professional efficiency, while treating their defeated enemies with the courtesy that separated civilized conquerors from simple pirates, even as they demonstrated that human military dominance was now absolute and unquestionable. The sight of armored human troops walking through halls where alien diplomats had once debated humanity's fate symbolized the complete reversal of power that had occurred during 6 months of warfare that had shattered every assumption about galactic military balance. The Marines carried weapons that represented the pinnacle of human engineering, while their training reflected centuries of combat experience that peaceful alien species could not match, despite their technological advantages. Negotiator Kim Jae-hun entered the council chamber accompanied by a small delegation of human officials, while the alien representatives waited to learn what terms would be imposed by their conquerors. His presence in the ancient hall where humanity had once been threatened with extinction demonstrated that military victory had given humans the power to reshape galactic civilization according to their own vision of justice and order. The negotiation table had been prepared according to human protocols, rather than the elaborate ceremonial arrangements that had traditionally governed council meetings. "Distinguished representatives," Kim began as he addressed the defeated alien leaders with the formal courtesy that human diplomacy maintained even toward former enemies. "President Seo Min-jung has authorized me to present the terms under which hostilities will cease and normal relations can be restored between our civilizations." His words carried the weight of human military power, while offering possibilities for peace that many of the alien leaders had not expected to survive long enough to hear. The surrender terms presented by the human delegation shocked the council, members with their unexpected moderation as they had prepared for the harsh subjugation that victorious species had traditionally imposed on defeated enemies throughout galactic history. Instead of demanding tribute or territorial concessions, the humans proposed a restructuring of galactic government that would ensure equal representation for all species while preventing any single civilization from dominating others through military threat or economic pressure. "You're not going to enslave us?" asked Speaker Zilara of the psionic dominion as her ethereal form flickered with confusion and disbelief. Her species had expected complete destruction after their fleets had been systematically eliminated by human forces that had demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything in Council arsenals. The mental emanations from her translucent body indicated emotions that had no equivalent in human psychology, as she struggled to understand mercy from conquerors who possessed the power to destroy entire civilizations. Commander Park Tae-min entered the chamber accompanied by Dr. Kim So-ra and Ambassador Lee Woo-jin, while the alien representatives recognized the humans who had warned them months ago about the consequences of underestimating human military capabilities. His presence served as a reminder of the choice that had led to the current situation, while demonstrating that human victory had been the result of preparation and strategic thinking rather than simple luck or alien miscalculation. "We didn't fight this war to become tyrants," Park explained as he looked at each alien representative with the calm confidence of someone whose warnings had been proven correct through events that had reshaped galactic civilization. "We fought to prove that we deserve respect and equal treatment in the community of civilized species." His words carried the moral authority that came from victory achieved through superior preparation and tactical excellence rather than technological advantage or numerical superiority. The new Galactic Council structure proposed by human negotiators would redistribute power among all member species, while establishing military oversight that would prevent any civilization from using force to impose its will on others. Human fleets would serve as peacekeepers to ensure that conflicts would be resolved through negotiation and compromise rather than military action, while maintaining the technological superiority necessary to enforce galactic stability. Councillor An Bora took her place as the human representative in the reformed council, while her presence in the seat that had once been occupied by species that considered humans primitive marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. Her appointment represented not just military victory, but the recognition that humanity possessed the wisdom and moral authority necessary to lead the community of civilized species toward a more stable and equitable future. Dr. Kim So-ra presented the scientific and intelligence analysis that had made human victory possible, while demonstrating that their success had resulted from decades of careful study and preparation, rather than simple aggressive instincts. Her research had identified the weaknesses and vulnerabilities that human forces had exploited, while maintaining detailed records of alien capabilities that would guide future peacekeeping operations and diplomatic relations. Engineer Kang Hye-jin supervised the integration of human technology with alien systems as the new galactic government began implementing infrastructure improvements that would benefit all member species while ensuring that human military advantages would be maintained. For defensive purposes, her engineering teams worked alongside alien scientists to develop collaborative projects that combined the best aspects of different technological approaches while preventing any single species from gaining advantages that might threaten galactic stability. The final ceremony establishing the new Galactic Council took place in the same chamber where humanity had been threatened with subjugation, while representatives of all species participated in creating governmental structures that would ensure lasting peace through strength rather than the fragile agreements that had failed when tested by real conflict. Human military power would guarantee that future disputes would be resolved through negotiation while